You know, they post a lot of political stuff and whatnot. We don't want that. It draws too much attention. What we want to do is focus on survival. Is there going to be a need? Quite possibly. Don't know that yet. There are tons of reasons why we would need to be prepared. And yes, government overreach is one of them. They have done it in so many other countries before, like Germany, for instance, Russia, China, Vietnam, even in the UK. Hence the reason that some of our ancestors come back here in the day. There have been various instances in history where people were left with nothing, not even their homes. War, plague, earthquakes, and whatnot. History is filled with stories of people with no food, water, or shelter. However, what's moving and intriguing is the ability for some humans surviving despite all this. When one comes to think of life, your first guess about living without the basics is that you can't make it through the day. But you can, and people have. When a prepper starts preparing, he or she is mentally prepared about the worst case scenarios if the shit hits the fan. However, there are more than just mental preparations which is needed in order to actually survive. Survival isn't just living a day or two without anything. You have to make the impossible possible and make the conditions suitable enough for you to live with at least the basics again. Today, people view preppers and survivalism as preparing for a holocaust, war, zombie apocalypse, whatever. A government collapse or government collapse. What people don't realize is that disaster can strike in any form, and the catastrophe can affect you and your family on a personal level. Even worse is the fact that your government or any other nation that you might be in may not be able to help you. Sometimes a small disaster entirely affects individuals without moving the entire nation. So chances are you or a small group of people are the only ones suffering. And there's not much that others can do. What is it that one can do when he or she loses everything? If you are a hiker, camper, or have lived in the wild for some time, then you need to adapt all that hiking, camping wisdom to urban scenarios of being homeless. Prepper or not, one must carry his basic belongings and essentials to survive. In a survival bag, this way you will at least be able to provide for yourself through initial times. If you lose everything, Scotty, which includes your home, if you lose everything, then it's best considering options like make a shift shelter and whatever food sources that might be available at your disposal. People do not consider homeless as a shit hits the fan scenario. However, this is from where things start turning out of control. This is where other problems sprout because being homeless would leave you without food, clothing, and water. So let's consider a natural disaster situation like Katrina or the Haiti earthquake, where huge populations were left homeless in just hours. In a situation like this, you must know how to make shelter for yourself and your family. If there are any restrictions against putting up temporary shelters, then you need to find a safe place to make it through the night. If this place has some natural food sources, then this is your best chance to spend your night or even days here. If you're within an urban setting, then look for a wooded area where there are less chances of hygiene risk. If you have your survival or bug out bag with you, then you must be carrying the tent with you. Find yourself a safe, secluded place where this tent can be set without any bigger problems with any problems arising. If you can't find a flat surface to put up your tent, then just clear the debris and make it as feasible to sleep as possible. It is very important to find spots that are safe for any invasion of any animal, because people in a shit hit the fan scenario are desperate to loot anything that you got and they can get their hands on, and they can become extremely violent. When in a situation like that of a natural disaster, you don't have the luxury of buying food and then storing it for days. For one, stores will be either destroyed or left empty before you regain your senses. Therefore, carrying your bug out bag is essential, as it will at least have some food stored. If your bug out bag doesn't have any food stored, then it's best to rely on the option Mother Nature has for you. There are various edible weeds growing around in urban settings like dollarweed, dock, catbrier, all kinds of stuff. Plants would be your blessing in disguise, as they would be the first edible out that is most likely to be eaten, as compared to insects and other food, or going to a dumpster, whatever you survive with. Do your research on the nuts, berries, and plants that are found abundantly growing around that are safe for ingestion in any form, cooked or raw. I still highly recommend that most plants that you get, some of the things you might want to do, you have no idea whether or not it's an edible plant. Do you risk it? If you're starving to death, would you risk it? Yes.
Wait, catch it.
I know, yeah.
Cut it, milk it, put it on your tongue. Wait about 5 minutes. If it starts to get numb, tingly, or your lips start swelling, don't eat it. That's one of the ways you can do that. I was taught a long time ago, and I wrote that in here somewhere. Black and blue are good for you. Yellow and red, you could be dead. All right, those are some of the basics to kind of go by when checking berries and stuff. Most of our plants around Missouri, they're fairly edible. Some of them you have to cook. Some of them you don't. You can eat them raw. Like the scallions, the wild onions or whatever. You can pick them up, brush the dirt off them, and eat them too. I did it when I was a kid. But yeah. If you are good at hunting and fishing, then you have more options to prepare yourself a nutritious meal. In fact, eating anything that walks, slithers, or flies is comparatively safer than trusting every plant you come across. One thing I was taught, black and blue are good for you, red, yellow, and red could be dead. Just keep doing your research about what plants and animals are safe to eat in extreme conditions. As for water, there may or may not be resources, but if you have at least some to survive through the day in your survival kit, then you'll stay hydrated until you figure it out. Most shit hits fan scenarios, preppers put their bets on drinking from a stream or a river. But if you have created fire, then it's best to purify it through boiling or purifying tablets, which we're going to cover some of the basics on water purification here in a little bit. So if there's a situation like heavy rain, then gather containers, any kind of containers you find, an old sheet of plastic, even a sheet of plastic.
Man's best friend right here.
All right, on hot days where you don't have rain, you can actually take an old piece of full mill plastic, and you can drape it over a plant, let the dew get on it, then kind of bunch it up, shake it to the bottom, you get a sip out of it. Not much, but it'll help. And that's one thing you want to do. You can't last 4 days. You know, you can go 4 days without water. You can go 4 weeks without food. But without water, that's the basic. That's most important. So if you're in a situation where you're out with nothing, first thing you want to do, find water, period. And when you start building a shelter, you're going to start sweating. You need to replenish that water. You build a shelter first, you may not have the energy to go foraging around for water. So water first, shelter next. Okay?
Our ancestors always made their camps by streams. Very near. Indians always lived by water. That's the whole thing. For their survival, they know that the animals have to go to water. If you're going to build a shelter, being as close to water as you can, if you got any water, it's going to be very easy.
Absolutely.
To survive.
All right. Well, most people are thinking right now, and I know some of you are, not most of you, but some of you are thinking right now that it seems a little extreme, some of the stuff we talk about, and that's likely not to happen to us. But just think for a minute, what if? You know?
We've got the biggest earthquake fault line on the planet, going straight through Kansas, Missouri, Chicago, Illinois. Imagine it, when it happens, it's going to destroy a lot of bridges, highways,